Welcome to Beyond the Desk Admin Advocates, where we explore what it truly means to be an administrative professional in today's world. I'm Melissa Mahoney, CEO of the International Association of Administrative Professionals.
And I'm Rachel Suman, CXO of IAAP.
This podcast isn't your typical industry talk. We're here to bring you real conversations, real stories, and real solutions.
From AI to self-awareness journeys, we're here to discuss the deep issues that admins face every day. This is Beyond the Desk Admin Advocates.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back. This is our last episode of season 2. I cannot believe we are at the end of our season. We've had such a fantastic time creating this content for you all, and really hope you've enjoyed listening, watching, however you're consuming. Appreciate so much the shares and the feedback we keep getting. Please keep that coming and share it widely. Hopefully while we're off on this break, you can go back and that will give you time to catch up on any episodes that you may have missed. For our final episode today, we have a really exciting topic, I think, that felt sort of like a wrap in some ways on a lot of different topics that we've touched on throughout both seasons of the podcast. And we really want to talk about using connection as a resource and a tool versus things that might be a bit more divisive. And we're going to really talk through some examples because I think there are some things on that list that could be divisive that we don't even recognize we might be doing. So this is a really great, obviously we'll connect it to leadership competencies because that's what we do. Spoiler! But this really, I think, is a way, in my mind, this is how we give you access to really truly becoming agents of change inside of your organization, culture champions. We've used that language before, and I think we've given you lots of ideas and concepts to think about and ways to sort of navigate your leadership competency growth and development. But this concept of connection versus divisive mentality, scarcity mindset versus abundance mindset is another way to look at that. Hopefully this will give you something really actionable to take away and really start becoming more influential, owning the influence that you already have. Because, becoming more influential, newsflash, you already have a ton of influence, whether you're using it and engaging it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were talking before we hopped on the episode, and it really is like I see our community are such powerhouses in this already. Like I see the care, the connection, the threads within the community with each other. You all are so amazingly beautiful at doing that. And so I want to dive into this list too, but I have to call that out because I think sometimes it's easy for us in the admin community to feel like we don't have that influence. We don't have a formal authority title, maybe. We don't have, I'm air quoting all of this for those of you who are listening, but we do. Like it doesn't require, and we've said this before, and I will say it again, like I believe there's more power that lies in roles that do not have that formal authority. Like the impact, the possibilities, the potential live even greater in your role, whether you have that formal authority or not. So I wanted to lay that foundation.
Can I just pause there? Because I just have to call attention to the fact that there are so many more non-titled people in the workplace than there are titled leaders.
Yeah.
So when you were just talking about like how much power you actually have, just think about the sphere of influence you have in your peer community, because there's so many more non-formal leaders inside of a workplace, inside of an ecosystem, inside of a society. Like thinking about you triggered my advocacy, my
the button.
You pushed it. Because I was like, that's truly at the heart of, anyone who does any sort of advocacy work or is involved in community impact work. We all know like the power exists in numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So just think about like don't think about it just specifically to the admin community, but all non-titled people, non-titled leaders. So people who don't have a formal leadership title far outnumber in every ecosystem. The workforce laborers far outnumber, formal leaders. And I'm not trying to like start any sort of revolution here, unless it's a revolution for like exhibiting and owning your leadership impact. Like that's the revolution that I want you to really grab onto, because I really, really, really want you to think about like how much influence you actually have and whether or not you are harnessing it truly to the highest potential.
Yes.
Okay, you want to get into the
list? Let's do the list.
Now that we're all fired up.
We could stand on that soapbox all day. So, yes.
Okay. Well, let's start with the unique position that we think admins have inside of the ecosystem, which, again, we talked about that specifically on the last episode, but we've talked about it often, that it is one of those things about the profession. It is unique. It's hard to equate it to other people's roles inside of the company because it's dramatically different than any other role.
Yeah. And I think nothing will be like, these are not necessarily going to bowl any of our admin community over. They're not going to be like, what? But it's important to hear it. Like sometimes we know it. I'm pointing at my head and then we know it in our heart. So we're asking you to shift to the knowing it in the heart and kind of that influence piece underneath, and like, you are this and it means this.
Yep. Right. Yes. These are not going to be shocking to anyone. Let's start with the bridge builder. We talk about the nucleus sometimes, the connector, the center of the spoke. Yes. And that really is about relationship management. And there are a lot of relationships that admins are responsible for managing, either on behalf of yourself, because you need those relationships in order to achieve your goals, or on behalf of the people that you're supporting, whether that's internal, external. You're facilitating. I loved that part of this definition that we wrote down. Facilitating collaboration is such a beautiful framework for why bridge building in your role is so important. So you may not be the one who's actually you're not the end user on the collaboration side, but you're facilitating collaboration between departments, or collaboration between internal and external players, collaboration between your leaders and the board. There's lots of spaces where you may not be present in the actual collaboration that needs to occur, but you are facilitating that connection, which is the literal, like, I'm putting the bricks, I'm paving the bridge so that this collaboration can happen.
And bridge building is such a beautiful metaphor. It's one of my favorites, because to your point, I just want to underline this one too, because a bridge in essence is connecting two things that would never be able to make it to each other, right? I hope y'all are watching this, because I talk with my hands normally, but this is like, they are everywhere. But it really is like, this is an island, and the bridge is the only way that people can get across. And if you think about the impact of that with, whether it's any of the relationships that you just mentioned, like, otherwise those are on islands all to themselves. And there's no getting across. But once those bridges are built, like, there's so much traffic back and forth that gives people access. So this one's one of my favorites.
I love it. And it's a tool for connective tissue. So you can be a connector here. And the divisive thing would be either, number one, not taking ownership of that role that you have, or number two, choosing not to build the bridge for whatever reason. We'll get to some of that. And that feels really nefarious, but what I will say is that often happens not for nefarious reasons, not because there's malicious intent, not because you're explicitly looking at the two islands and saying, I don't want the connection here. That often happens because there are other priorities that come up or get in the way, and it creates less urgency around the connection and more urgency around the people on that island are asking for this, and the people on that island are asking for this. And so let me just go do those things.
Yes.
Instead of building the bridge where they would potentially be able to collaborate and get it done differently or do it better or recognize the impact that those things have. So sometimes it's not even a conscious choice. So I think that's why this is an important call out too, because we often take it for granted as sometimes we miss opportunities to build bridges, I think is what I'm trying to say.
I like that.
I know that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. No, I like, and I do like that it's not malicious. Like
No.
we'll get into.
There are some things we'll talk about that are a little bit more malicious, but that one,
I think they're more rare though.
Right. It's just more rare. It's not to say that some folks aren't saying, I prefer if they do those things on their islands and they're not collaborating. And that's an opportunity for you to really explore why you feel that way. But more often than not, there isn't malicious intent here. It's unconscious. And so that's why it's important to talk about it, even though these are really obvious things. The information hub, these are all very connected in terms of the unique position of the admin. But the information hub is a really important one. And again, is connected to using that for abundance and good and connection versus some of the impacts on the other side of that are, hoarding or using information, again, maliciously because that's the impact, but not necessarily on the intent side. It's sometimes we operate in that space because we feel like it's giving us agency, power, or even protection. So I think that's a really common response when we see people not using the information on behalf of good. It's usually because we're fearful or we think if other people have this information, somehow we lose that ability to protect ourselves, or we're going to use it. It's that, I'm going to just stick this in my back pocket.
The eggs in the
or the card up my sleeve. And that's a very valid human response. And if we think of the information hub as a tool and a resource to really harness culture and becoming that champion of culture, navigating change in a productive way, modeling what that looks like for other people, that information actually becomes like a gold mine. And you can start to use it as currency throughout your environment. If you protect it and hoard it and hold it for yourself, it has very little potential impact because it's just resting with you.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody else felt this, but when you were talking about abundance and then hoarding, like I actually felt those words in my body, like if I'm kind of a word person, but you really can. Like it's a visceral reaction when you think about abundance versus scarcity or hoarding. So I think, this mindset, that's why we call out this mindset, because it's so applicable to all of the things that we're going to talk about. Like even with the bridge building, the information, influence, all of those things. Like if we operate from a hoarding or a scarcity mindset, it's fear. It's at the base of it, it's fear. But I think we should call out too, I don't want to go too far down this road, but there are some toxic workplace cultures that really do impact that. So I think it's important to call out, like, we are not talking about true toxic workplace cultures. Like, it's nice to be like, we can all be friends and it's abundance and everything. But if you have toxic leadership, there are some places where
the ecosystem has to support this.
Please call us and let us talk to you. This is not applicable for those of you in
or
those
get
spaces.
Get out. Like there will come a time where you're going to have to make a decision about whether or not the ecosystem has the capacity for abundance.
Yeah. Which we talk about culture champions.
Right.
That's why. So I don't want to go down this path necessarily, but if you're somebody who's like, that would never work because my leader shows up this way or this happens or whatever, like we see you. And if you need to talk to somebody, if you need like, let us support.
There's always opportunity.
Fine.
100%.
Yeah.
There is always opportunity that exists. So it's much more complex than, and I appreciate that. I think that's your intention here is that like this is, it can feel a little rose-colored glasses because it isn't as easy as employ these things and this will change.
Yeah.
It takes time. It takes lots and lots of continued, consistent culture shifting and baby steps sometimes. Sometimes it really truly is like I'm doing these things and I'm not seeing the impact. You have to find the impact in the small, what might not seem super impactful, but are actually meaningful steps that are, or signs that things are changing.
Yeah.
So there's always opportunity there. So this is not an all or nothing. Nothing we ever give you is black and white, or I think we've established that we live in a space where curiosity is abundant.
Yeah.
And that's required too when you're talking about becoming agents of change. True culture champions have flexed that muscle and understand like this is not a 24-hour process.
Yeah.
These are strategies and ways to start influencing and navigating some of that change, but it takes time.
Yeah. It absolutely does. Thank you. That was much more clear.
Oh, no. I think we both are really great at putting lots of words, which is why we get called out for how much time we take.
Right? Well,
I guess.
So we've talked about the opportunities. Maybe should we move on to kind of recognizing divisive behaviors and then we'll wrap with strategies?
That sounds great. So we already talked about information hoarding because some of these are sort of the inverse, whatever that is, the opposite.
The opposite.
The opposite of some of the unique position of the admin role and connection strategies. But information hoarding, again, it's the mindset around it too that we're asking you to really inspect, because I don't think it's happening consciously often. I think sometimes we're just navigating the reactive state of our day-to-day work, and then we go into that protective mode and we're like, this is, if I hold this, then that gives me power.
Yeah.
Because I'm the only one who knows this information, or I'm the only one or I'm afraid of what happens when other people get access.
Or I'm moving too fast. Like things are moving too fast and we don't take that minute. We talked on the last episode about the pause. We don't take a moment to pause and say, who all needs this information to be effective? So I'm kind of going to strategy, sorry, but the divisive behavior, that is often a reason that is showing up. And we don't, to your point, we don't think of it as divisive. But we're on a roll and we don't take a moment to think about that.
Yeah. There's definitely one here that I want to talk about because we both oohed and awed when this popped up on the list for us. But competitive gatekeeping.
You should just read it because
I'm going to read it and then we're going to dive into it because gatekeeping in and of itself is an issue for us. So we're going to dive into this. So making others jump through unnecessary hoops or creating processes that serve your convenience rather than organizational efficiency.
Ooh, mic drop.
I'm going to let you sit with that for a second. Again, this is something that I think we consistently see as a task or a role, a responsibility that admins actually believe is a part of their job. Like I'm supposed to gatekeep on behalf of the people I support. We challenge this in the partnership playbook too. We really dive into, there's a section where we dive into gatekeeping on the administrative side. And the challenge here is we often navigate that on behalf of the person we're supporting, which is on surface, it looks like partnering because you're like, oh, on behalf of Rachel,
Mhm.
I'm going to gatekeep her time and her energy, and I'm going to manage all of those things. And that comes at the cost of other people,
Sometimes.
of other work, of
Yeah.
other, not all the time.
Yeah.
But it will. I
Yeah.
promise you it will, if that's the only space you're gatekeeping
Yeah.
on behalf of just the person you support. And that's often designed. Like, we design that sometimes in the job. Sometimes your executive will even say, I expect you to do this on my behalf.
Yeah.
What we forget, or what we don't recognize or realize, is the impact that has on the rest of the ecosystem. And then what impact that has on your ability to have influence, to be a change agent, to be seen by your peer community as a collaborator, or as someone who's going to support the proactivity, the leadership competencies. It creates a bit of divisiveness just by its very virtue, that you are protecting one person that feels like it could potentially be out of alignment with the protection of mission, or whatever it is, the shared goal, the shared responsibility, the team. You're truly creating separation or divisiveness from the team. Now, that doesn't mean that all of the parts of gatekeeping are misguided or wrong. Like, there are definitely parts of that that you need to hold on to. The care and the collaboration that needs to occur in that partnership, that's a good part of, I think, what we intended when we said gatekeeping. But man, we need to really unpack, is this really the way? Is that the way? Or is it more that we need to be thinking on behalf of our partner, on behalf of the organization, on behalf of the goals, on behalf of the priorities? Just filtering it through that one filter can create a cost. And I think often the cost is impact and collaboration, and even being seen by your peers, or creating that structure where if I get on this person's good side, then I can bypass the gatekeep and get to the player. And that often happens because we're only looking at it through this filter. And so we think then differently about time, capacity, the role, and it's often disguised as something that's very caring and supportive and on behalf of the person we're supporting. But there's something underneath it. There's a layer underneath it that we're not even seeing. We don't even see the rest of the impact.
Yeah. The part that really called out to me, that serves your convenience rather than the organizational efficiency. And I think we're all guilty of this. So this is not a judgment call in any way, but it can be easy to be like, I've got so much on my plate. Like, how can I make this easier for me? And efficiency process, like, all of that is good. So I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. But if at the end of the day, the reason you are gatekeeping is because doing it this way is easier for you, versus looking at the impact to organization, to efficiency, to your executive, to your partner, whoever you need to look at it with, that is inherently a divisive behavior, intentionally or unintentionally. And I think we all are guilty of that.
100%. The last one we absolutely have to talk about, which is probably the most malicious of all of them, is the gossip trap. And this one is tricky because we've talked about this on a couple of different episodes. You know, this idea of venting. We walk into this really murky water when we start talking about gossip. And here's what I will say about that, just even from our own team culture. You know when you've stepped into the murky water. If you're in the murky water, it's probably not probably. If you're in the murky water, you're in the space of either gossip or ill intent of some, not even necessarily consciously, but we all know when we're having that conversation about the person who's not present, or about the thing that is just me complaining to someone else. And you know we don't always feel, you might feel relieved after because you've unloaded,
Yeah.
whatever it is that's stressing you out. But we walk away and we know, like, you have the residue, it sits there, it may be something so minor and insignificant that you're like, this is not material at all. This is not going to harm anybody. But it adds this little tiny layer of residue for both you and the other person who is part of that gossip or that conversation. And it also doesn't do much to resolve it outside of you feeling a little bit better because you've gotten it off your chest.
Yeah.
And so this is such a, once you start to allow even just a toe to dip in that murky water, that spreads like,
sucks you under.
Man, it just does. And then you give permission. Even if you're like, this is so like not important, no one's going to care that I vented to Rachel about this thing. It doesn't matter. No one's going to even know about it. It's not anything that's even relevant. It's something, completely irrelevant. It still has powerful impact because you just put a little tiny little piece of residue on both of you.
Yeah.
Even though you might feel better in the moment, it exists, and then that stuff builds.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about culture champions and agents of change, you just tarnished your credibility. And so that's just more work that you're going to have to do because it requires repair. If you've started to exhibit any of those behaviors, you have to undo that. You have to get rid of that residue. That takes work before you can even be seen as a credible culture champion or agent of change.
Yeah.
Because it diminishes trust. Again, it creates this ecosystem of permission to play in that way. And so I'm trying to think of, I'd like to wrap with some sort of tangible example of this, because I think this is even the space where I can say, but if you're not doing the self-reflection or the introspective work, you may not recognize it. You may walk away and be like, oh, I got that off my chest. I feel great.
Yeah.
And the residue's there, whether you see it or not. And I think the even bigger part here is that you transfer it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're never just sitting in a room and venting to yourself. It's someone, some other person's on the other end of that combo.
Yeah. Yeah. It does. And I think I can't think of a tangible example necessarily. I have a great strategy to counter this also.
Beautiful. Let's go there.
But before I do, I think the really great kind of litmus test, if you will, is, do you walk away feeling like you have maybe a plan, a next step, a something to resolve whatever issue is happening? That's often what I use as my litmus test. Is you talk it out, and I've walked away and I'm like, okay, I'm going to have this conversation, or I'm going to take this step to resolve whatever that issue is. Or that's not always the case based on what it is, but that's one of mine.
Yes. And the person you choose is critically important.
Yes.
Because you also have a responsibility to think about, they're not going to get to go resolve whatever it is that you've leveraged, because it's not theirs. But that residue exists whether you have a resolution, a plan, or not. So ensuring that the person, we've talked about accountability buddies, we've talked about, the relationships you have to be extremely thoughtful about who you bring in. I really am an advocate for someone who's not in your workplace. Do not bring people in your workplace into workplace issues. They're the last people. You're giving them the residue, whether you like it or not, whether you get to resolve it or not. And that's not always functionally, it's hard to give people outside of your workplace an issue without okay, well, here's all the things that you need to know first. That's a 2-hour conversation just to bring them up to speed on context. I get that, which means if it has to be someone internal, choose wisely. Be very thoughtful about whether or not that person is going to be able to take that residue and not allow it to stick with them, because that's one of the other impacts that we forget about. That I had this conflict with Diane and I now gave it to Sarah. And Sarah never had a conflict with Diane, but now feels some sort of way because I had this conflict, and great. I was able to get to a resolution. I'm going to have a conversation. But what happens to Sarah on the other side where she now has this residue, being really mindful and thoughtful about that, and even being able to reconcile, circling back with Sarah to say, hey, I just wanted you to know I resolved this. Thank you so much. Here was the outcome of this. You know, I appreciate being able to talk that out with you. And I just want to check in and make sure you understand, like, this is resolved.
Yeah, we're good. So I have to shout out our dear friend Shola Richards, which I know we've done a few times. And he is actually starting a movement that I don't know if that's true. It's on LinkedIn. He called it a movement. But I am a firm believer in this, and it's called KOSSIP. KOSSIP. You probably saw it. I did. And it is actually kindness gossip. And so it is talking positively about somebody who is not in the room. And I am all for it. And we're going to make 2026 the year of gossip. So that is the strategy to counteract gossip, is gossip. And the next time you're in a room with somebody, think of something positive to say about somebody, and then it gets back to them. And what a great feeling. So,
and talk about like culture championship,
right?
Make gossip a thing.
See Shola for more details.
Okay, I know. Obviously, this is a beautiful way to wrap the season with probably the longest podcast we've had all season. But I think it was really important for us to dive into this topic in the list. And, you know, as we wrap the season, again, we just want to say thank you for joining us on this journey. If you have thoughts, ideas, things you want to have us talk about next season, we'll take a little bit of a break, but we'll start thinking about podcast topics fairly soon. So we would love to hear from you. Get caught up on all the episodes. This gives you a little time because we'll stop pumping them out as quickly. And we will see you next season.
We will. Thanks, everyone.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Beyond the Desk Admin Advocates. We hope you enjoyed diving deep into the world of admins with us.
Remember, this podcast isn't just about listening. It's about taking action. Whether it's advocating for yourself in the workplace or supporting your fellow admins, let's continue to elevate this profession together. If you have any thoughts, questions, or topics you'd like us to explore in future episodes, don't hesitate to reach out to us on social media or through our website.
Until next time, keep pushing beyond the desk. And remember, change begins with you. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.